Welcome to the Esports Business Network podcast. I'm your host, Trent Knox. I'm the founder and CEO of Esports Business Network. This is episode number 19 of the EBNP. Our guest is Kyler Tandal, the owner and operator of EBN Live Designs. Kyler is a wizard behind the video switchboard, juxtaposing live video with motion graphics to bring an elevated experience to esports tournaments around the globe. In this episode, we talk about the experience growing up on the island of Oahu and the Hawaiian Islands, what it takes to compete in a small market for esports, and what the obstacles are to be successful. Enjoy.
This is the future. Evolution. This is the
Hey y'all, this is Trent Knox with the Esports Business Network podcast, and today our guest is Kyler Tandal. And he's a video production person within esports. And welcome to the show. Oh my God, I'm about to
No, it's
Kyler. Hold on. Or I'll just redo this because I cut this part out anyway. Welcome to the show, Kyler.
Thanks for having me, Chen. I appreciate it, and trust me, it happens all the time. I respond to both because people see my name and it's just, oh yeah, Tyler or Kyle. I've gotten as weird as a Skyle one time.
Yeah.
And that was a really weird experience.
Yeah, I was just trying to record the intro for this and segueing Kyler into the show. I was like, Kyler Tandal, Tyler Candal. Going both ways, but Kyler and I have gotten connected through a friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, Sky Kawiloa, who is now sort of the head of esports at the University of Hawaii. Kyler and I both have attended the University of Hawaii at different periods in our life, and so it was a really cool connection that he made between you and I, so that we can sort of shed light on the scene of esports in Hawaii, and what it really means to the overall global esports scene between the West and the East. And so. Sure. Let's take the time machine back for a second and let's talk about Kyler. How did you get into gaming?
How did I get into gaming? All right. So I think for me, that story, I've been a gamer all my life. I think there's so many people in the industry today that, it's all about you played games as a kid. But how I started was at this little LAN center out here. Well, they're not very little, I should say. It's Hawaii's biggest LAN center, right? They've been one of their longest standing one. I think they just made 15 years, if I'm not mistaken, called PC Gamers Hawaii. And this was back in like 2014, I think, where I was playing in tournaments over there. And then they made a little announcement that said, hey, we're looking for volunteers for our tournament organization staff. You would get free time to play at the store, which to me at the time was like, oh, heck yeah. Like I come here all the time. I just want to play games for fun, for free and hang out with my friends. Sure, why not? And so that kind of launched me on this path where I started with them as a tournament organizer and a TO. And I was doing that for a little while. I volunteered with them for a year or a few years actually under that position. And then over time, we just kind of grew. The tournaments got bigger. The events we tried to every year do bigger events, do crazier things. Push the value and the experience for our customers and the people that participated in our events. And through that, one of the necessary aspects of that was broadcasting. That we didn't really have at the beginning. It was a real bare bones, fly off the wall stream. We were shoutcasting, but you couldn't hear anything. It was loud. It was noisy. It was terrible quality. And I think over the years, I kind of got trained in, as I picked up things here and there to kind of get me to where I am today. But I think that all, to answer your question, it all starts back at PC Gamers Hawaii.
Yeah. So a little bit farther back, you talked about everybody's game as their kid, but it's a little different because this is an international audience and everyone's experience with getting games is different. So I didn't grow up in Hawaii. I grew up here in the mainland in all over the place because my dad's military, and that's how I kind of ended up in Hawaii for the time that I lived there. And I don't know what it was like before, what we have now, Amazon, mainstream distribution. Did games arrive in Hawaii earlier, later? What was it like growing up and going and shopping? I know the Best Buy is in Pearl City, but like what was it like?
Honestly, thinking back to it, it wasn't. I mean, I guess as a kid, you're not gonna get your games on release day unless you have like really cool parents, right? But like for me, I remember it being all these tiny little mom and pop type of smaller toy stores here in Hawaii.
Okay.
Like I think we had GameStops, and as time went on, definitely GameStop became the staple. Like
Yeah.
I think you and me are close enough in age to where we can still remember midnight releases for games, like hard copy releases, going to a GameStop at like 11 o'clock at night, camping out, and then waiting in line and chatting with the people in line about, hey, what are you excited about in the game? Blah, blah, blah. Are you going to play multiplayer? Maybe you make a friend. Maybe you do that. But I think before that, like really in the early days of game, I can't speak to before the 2000s because I wasn't paying attention to games as much. I mean, granted, I don't think I was old enough to have memories too much from back then because if you remember anything, if you have strong memories before kindergarten, my God, you have a great memory. But anyways,
Right.
yeah, like it's mom and pop stores. Like we didn't have national brand chains that were like your go-to spots, right? Nowadays, like a GameStop, we have Best Buys, right? We have Targets, Walmarts, blah, blah, blah. Back then, if you wanted the newest game, you would go to there was this place back in town called Toys and Joys. And that's where I remember going because that's just where it was. That's who was able to get it the quickest, or that's who was able to get it the most consistently. And I think that's one of the unique things about Hawaii is that because there's only so many things to do out here, you're either a beach person, you're either like a business person, like a book person, or you're kind of like a gamer, or you're a mix of all of any of them. You know what I mean? Like we're on an island, bro. Like we don't have all these crazy things to do. You can't go travel to another city over, drive to another city over, check out some sites and come back. You live here for a month. You can probably see everything you would need to see. You can see the whole island in a month.
Right. Speaking of which, you grew up on Oahu?
Yeah, I did. Born and raised.
Okay. And have you like ever talked to anybody's gaming experience on like Maui or Big Island or Lanai or Kauai, or have you talked to anybody about their
harder
growing up? Must be, yeah.
I have a couple buddies on Maui. I used to visit Kauai a lot. They definitely get it delayed. Oahu, I don't think we can actually get it. We could actually get it on release day here, but on those places, unless it was like a really big and a really planned launch. I know for Maui and Lanai, I think it's like because things have to get there by barge, they can't just fly everything in. It takes a little while, and so
on Kona,
yeah, or Big Island too, or Big Island. I don't know. They might fly. They might have used to fly shipments out there, but I do know that up front, like before, back in the hard copy days, it was harder being on a neighbor island. I know that for sure.
What's the ping and the download in Hawaii? I can't even remember right now.
Yes. So to the West Coast, if you play any game, you are looking on the low side, depending on which provider you have. So I think the best ping right now you can get is in the 60s, 60 milliseconds, to certain servers through certain providers, like 65, 70-ish is kind of like, I think, the average range. I think at my house with the provider I have, I won't say it just in case, but we get like I get like 72 to servers in like San Francisco and stuff like that. So it's not terrible, but you definitely, when you play a game here and then you move to the mainland, you definitely notice the difference of like oh my god, or like you play like if I took a trip to Vegas and I played at a LAN center out there, and I was like, oh my god, like I can
Yeah.
actually do things. Like I can see,
Right.
like I was playing Call of Duty and I was like, oh, I can see the guy and shoot him before I get shot. Like it's not even like it's like the training belt. Yeah, I always
It's night
equate
and
it
day.
to, yeah, it's that, you ever watch the Naruto or like Rock
Yeah.
Lee takes off the weights? Yeah, that's what it feels like. Like you play
Yeah.
out here and you go to the mainland, you're just different. You're just better. You just
Yeah.
it's crazy.
With the advancements in technology, hopefully 5G and satellite distribution brings that ping down and that upload up. And that's why I wonder what the difference, obviously, for those people who don't know, and I was one of those people for a while, didn't know much about Hawaii until I started living there, living on island. No matter where you are, you could be living down south in Suriname, like some of the people in our group, or Madagascar, off of Africa, like some of the people in our group, or even some of the um, uh, Thailand, in that area. Um, Internet's different everywhere, and technology, as it is, started to bring into the infrastructure. Oahu, for those of you, this is where I was going with this, is the infrastructure capital of Hawaii. It is the e-commerce area. It is where West meets East. In so many different ways, because you have downtown Honolulu, and then you have Aloha Tower, which is a lot closer to like the Chinatown and the Eastern influences, and you'll get such a multicultural experience in just such a small island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Um, and there's so much value there, and I think that as people start to look at competition in esports, they'll look to Hawaii and what Sky is doing with C9 now, and it's I guess there's an announcement, another announcement coming up, as to what that looks like. What's the roadmap for Hawaii UH Warrior esports, and two of the influences are here. We're both people who have sort of a conversation about how can the rest of the world bring value, how can esports in Hawaii bring value to the rest of the world, and how can the rest of the world bring value to esports in Hawaii. And so I guess I'd ask you, with what you're doing now with EMP Live Designs, how are you able to help different levels of people in the industry accomplish their goals with broadcast?
Ooh, okay. That's where you went with it. I like that. Okay. So how am I accomplishing the goals for different levels of people? So for me, I think what I ended up seeing when I embarked on kind of branching off and making this company, and truly kind of really taking this seriously and saying, all right, I'm gonna, I want to make this work. I want to be able to do this full time, and take this on as my my potential career path, or really trying to make an impact with this, was because I saw in the things that I was seeing with the experience I had, there wasn't a clear path for anyone that thought, maybe I want to do esports type or broadcasting, right? Broadcasting in general, traditional media, you have a pretty clear path. If you want to be on the radio, you want to be on TV, you're going to go to college, you're going to get a communications degree, and you're going to do these things. You're going to intern at different places, yada yada yada, and then that's kind of the goal, right? But what I was seeing, at least from where I stood, was there's so much content that's available for esports consumption, and there's so much desire for this content, right? The consumption of entertainment content through the medium of esports, right? That, there's a huge need, there's a huge desire, there's a huge want, but there's no clearly defined ways, and there's very few people actually doing it to where, you can't look at a stream and go, all right, I if I want to be that guy, these are the steps I have to take, right? And sometimes with some stream, or especially because of its broadcast and because it's production and it's behind the scenes and you're not in the camera's eye all the time, there's some top tier producers that work for these really big name companies like Riot, Blizzard, and all that, who get, who have sub 200 Twitter followers because people don't know, like people don't pay attention, or not everyone pays attention to the producers, and not everyone pays attention to the work that goes on behind the scenes. And so for me, one of the goals that I wanted to do was there was a couple different things, right? It was one, I wanted to make Hawaii a better place, right? I wanted to make an impact here, and I feel like I can do that through this, which I'll touch on. I'm sure we'll get to something like that along the lines later. But two was really give people a path of like, this is, if you want to be a successful producer, if you want to be a successful esports producer, these are the steps you have to take, right? These are the things you have to do. And I think part of that is, number one, you have to also, I had to also first become a successful esports producer, right? I have to be able to say, I've done these things. This is the work I've done. And that's part of the journey we're on right now. But two is really, kind of figuring out what are the steps, what are the ways that we do this, right? And I think one of the really cool things that me and Sky have we're working on right now is figuring out, well, how do we create like a program at the University of Hawaii around something like that, right? The certificate program, there's many different ways that we're going to tackle that certificate program, I think, but that's one of them, to target at the truly beginners, right? That's the entry level. These are some of the resources you can look at, and potentially down the road, what I'd like to do is, and then come intern for me, or come work with me, come work for me. And I can give you entry level broadcasts that, yeah, maybe it's not going to be highly viewed. There's not going to be crazy, there's not going to be a lot of pressure, but I think there's a beauty in that you can afford to fail, right? Or you can afford to mess up, because we all know the memes, right? When production gets wrong, does something wrong on a tier 1 broadcast, like, like LCS or Worlds even, right? It gets clipped, it gets put into videos, it gets shared all around the world, like, haha, look, these guys messed up, right? And I think there's pressure on people, and some people don't want to tackle the job because they're scared of messing up, right? So that's where I'm hoping that as I grow my contacts, and as I grow, with more contracts with different people and different leagues, organizations, that we can have entry level gigs of just, hey, you just need a game broadcasted. I have some people that are new. Let's try it, right? And then as that, I think, and this will wrap up the point real quick. I know I've been kind of going on for a little bit, but from there, right, we can then advance that and grow it at every tier of the way. Where like, hey, you've got a few jobs under your belt, you've got some experience, you're able to do these different things on broadcast. All right, we can start moving you into some low paying, per gig contracts. Right, start doing work in this field where you can get some experience, doing different things, working with casters, working with cameras, right? And then you just keep upping the ante every so often until, eventually they're a full-fledged, producer, and they can do any, the same type of things or anything, that is required of them. And maybe one day we'll hit a point where the top of the table is so saturated that we won't need as many. But at least in today's world right now, from what I can see, there is a need for this middle tier, where the people that are doing production at the top end, they've been doing production for a while, or they come from traditional media and stuff. But in 5, 10, 20, 25 years, who knows what's going to go on, right? Who knows how filled that top of the table is going to look. And I think we need to start now or my hope is that if we start now to kind of train up that next generation and teach people and grow people into those positions. I mean, as the esports industry grows, so too does the back end, the production, the behind the scenes people. And I think that's my goal with my company, is trying to create a clear path of how do you go from not knowing anything to being ready to work in that field.
A lot being said there. And I think the first thing that maybe most people want to know is, what are some of the popular broadcasters, streamers that are in Hawaii that you know of? Maybe not necessarily gaming, but maybe IRL. because it seems as though, at least from I haven't heard very often that people represent Hawaii as being a place that they um, they come from. They're broadcasters from there. I know people live there and broadcast, but I don't know how much they are emphasize or how much they're influencing. I should say they're influencing gaming, uh, uh, lifestyle, and esports in Hawaii. Do you have any like notable names that you would mention that are out there doing it?
Streamer wise, I would say the only one that comes to mind as of earlier this year, or maybe even this is dated info. So I'm sure there's more partners now, but I know as of a year and a half ago, he was one of the few partners on Island, and it's a guy by the name of Island Grown 88, I think is his name on Twitch. And he's one of those guys that truly tries to perpetuate. He's a streamer from Hawaii, he lives here, he was born and raised here, and it's his brand. And funnily enough, you tune onto his stream, and he's just a local Asian dude, which to some people might seem weird, but that's part of the culture. That's part of who we are as a place. Is that there's people from all over. There's people that look very different from each other out here, but we all still call this place home. And so I think that'd be one of the ones that I think comes to mind of like he's really tries to push that the Hawaii thing. He really tries to I think grow the platform a little bit. We've worked together on one event to kind of see like how can we benefit each other's influence, and can we grow together, which there's some pluses and minuses to that, sure. But I think a large part of it is that I think because we're in a weird spot, our time zone is kind of off. So unless you can afford to stream randomly or at different times of day, it's a little bit difficult, or it's not a little bit difficult. It is harder to get notice. You definitely are competing with, people from other time zones that it can be on, or more consistently, right? There's always there's an economic angle to that we don't have as many people that can live out here and stream full time. Because it is expensive out here. Some people work multiple jobs, and so that's where I think it does become a little bit more difficult. But I don't think that it's going to stay like that forever. I think
it's interesting because if you are a successful influencer, generally you have the finances to be a global influencer, because it's hard to be a local person from Hawaii, and some do end up becoming influencers and staying on island and representing that they come from Hawaii, but others move to San Diego, or some of the memes that come from Hawaii, right? Of that lifestyle of having island, grown up on the island, and then move to either the east or the west. It really makes no difference. But once you are in a place, there is a time zone, issue and things like that. What is it that you think would bring some more cohesion to it? Is it that, because I'm a little bit curious as to why the lifestyle of growing up or living your life on the island hasn't been something that's been popularized on a Twitch or a YouTube or a Facebook, based off of an IRL streamer. An IRL streamer that does. I know that Ice Poseidon flew out to Hawaii and spent some time and created a lot of content on island for some time. And it seems like that it's just like not like something you've said earlier, is that it's not enough training to show the value and coach someone up through being a PA to being a broadcaster to being a director producer, and and a lot obviously I'm pulling from a lot of different angles here to give like a reasoning behind why this is happening, is because in the US, and it is expensive to live in the US too, it's just variable based on the lifestyle that you came from, that it's more there's a larger population of people living here, so there's a larger audience to pool out of. Whereas, like you said, because Hawaii's in a time zone, HST, it's interesting because if you went live right now, I would catch you in prime time, whereas if you went live at the time that it is now where I'm at, you'd be reaching an audience in basically Asia or people just waking up in Europe, right? And so, does Hawaii have a high does Hawaii have a high demographic of people from Europe that they influence?
Honestly, I wouldn't be too sure about our influence numbers at the top of the table. I do know that there are a lot of instances, because even on my personal side, when I stream, which is very rarely nowadays, but when I was streaming actively, when I was in the hunt for a little while there, trying to make it as a personal streamer, I had a lot of regulars from Europe. So I do think that is a thing. I do know there's a bunch of street people from here, at least within the streamer community that I'm a part of. There's people that regularly tune in from Europe. It's not an unheard of thing where because you're one of the only things on at the middle of the night, some kid from, all the way out in the Balkans will tune into your stream and just be like, "Hey, what's going on? You seem cool," or "You're different." I think to answer the question of, is this why is it that IRL and all these other types, I think, why isn't there more streamers out here? I think that stands to the idea of, I think infrastructure is one, but also culture is another. Here it's not a lot about hey, look at me, like I'm doing this thing right out in IRL, like, you know what I mean? It's more about, I think, just kind of because of the culture, the vibe, right? It's just we're more laid back. You just want to chill, you want to have fun, you want to hang out, but we don't see that as much, where people are just going out and about. I do think though that there is a very strong recorded video presence, right? People make surfing videos all the time out here, like, and people now with the invention of, or with the popularity of drones nowadays, that's a thing all over. People will fly drones all over the place, take pictures, right? Photography and other traditional media is very strong out here. Like there is a lot of big things that goes down here in terms of photography, video, film, right? Almost at any point in the year, somebody's filming a movie out here. It doesn't matter when. I think it's just the infrastructure to allow for broadcasts, live broadcasts,
right? Yeah,
isn't quite in place yet, right? We don't have a strong wireless internet yet, right? We don't have 5G. We barely have 4G LTE, man. I'll tell you that much. Like, we're starting to get some of these newer technologies and some of these newer things, but I think in general, we need to up the game of our infrastructure and our network infrastructure, and some of these other things where there's talks. I know me and Sky both kind of have the ear of one of the local state senators, who he wants to push for more internet cable, right? Trans-Pacific cables and stuff like that, so that we can ping to different places, or we can get maybe faster or more bandwidth or things like that. And these are some of the ideas that are pushed. But yeah, I think it's a two-pronged thing, infrastructure and culture, that are really what limits, I think, a large portion of the streamers out here. But that's where, at least between me and Sky, we're hoping that because of our location, and because with COVID, tourism is not proving to be the most, reliable type of economic influence, some of the goal is to push this for tech. and push towards tech, push people into, tech side of things, which by extension means esports can thrive out here because there's some crazy ideas that have been kind of thrown around that I don't want to dive into because I know I'm veering off the original question, but
no,
yeah.
absolutely go off on it, because I mean, Hawaii, from my experience having spent there, is highly north oceanic. NOAA is out there. Always forget what that stands for, but weather is pretty much tracked all out there. The Hubble telescope out there. Pretty much all aspects of technology are there in Hawaii, outside of the commercial technology for people to utilize. So, there's an issue with broadcasting live from what I imagine on the upload speeds. So if upload, at least for something like you're doing, and even I face this issue, that you need a healthy amount of upload, depend upon how heavy and intensive it is. It could, I like to say like 100 megabytes for, 720, it makes me comfortable. But if I want to go to a 1080p broadcast, I'm a little bit, concerned like what the fluctuations will be on even 100 megabytes upload. It's that's why most platforms are restricted, to 720. So it's a problem I think kind of everyone faces, but even more so, for the island communities around the world.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's something. Well, I'll tell you right now. So when I do broadcast from my house here in Hawaii on Oahu, I am currently working with 35 meg up, which is not great at all. It's definitely nowhere near what I want.
Mm-hmm.
There's talk of we have a provider that provides fiber, but anyways, that's off the topic. So that I'll eventually maybe switch to them and get better. But in general, to kind of look at it with the infrastructure goals, I think, and the way that I think we will kind of try to push the issue on this and really try to make it to where we are a real viable, I think, location, is that, some of the ideas that have been thrown across is really laying that specific cable between us and Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, I want to say that is the centerpiece to this whole idea of how we think we'll grow Hawaii and how we think we'll grow Hawaii's tech side, is by really becoming that bridge, right? Culturally, we already are that bridge, right? Between the West and the East. You come here, you can look at a Chinatown right next to the most businessy district that we have here. But at the same time, it's just, we really are a melting pot of cultures. We really have a bunch of different people and personalities and all these things that borrow from all places around the world. And I think if we can find a way to make it to where we're viable as a technical side, so infrastructure wise, where if we got the same ping from here to Asia as you did from here to the West Coast, this becomes a very attractive place, right, to do business, because you can, you're in a time zone that allows you to kind of work both sides, right? If you work West Coast, East Coast, you can have people, you could potentially catch the same both markets in the same shift, right? If you kind of worked it out that way. And so there is a desire, I think, technologically to do things, not just for esports, but business, right?
Yeah.
And then to kind of tie that into the esports side now, what we're hoping is that if we can get enough traction and really push this issue to make it, I think, worth it to drop that cable or to get us connected, then this becomes a place to maybe drop server points. If my lifelong goal, if I can ever get this accomplished, I will feel super great. Like, I'll feel like I set up the gamers behind me to success, is to get some major developer to drop a server out here. Because if we have equal ping to the US and East, or to West Coast and East Coast, put a server here, you can have people from Asia playing people from the West Coast on the same, like a super server, similar to what they did in China, right? With the Chinese super servers that pulls all of Asia together. Why not do the same thing, but pull the West Coast and the East Coast here so that you can have, League of Legends pros from, the West Coast playing against pros from Japan, Korea, China, right? And, on relatively equal ping. I mean, it's not going to be the same ping. It's not going to be great, right? It'll still be probably 50, 60, depending 70, depending on, which side you are on. But hey, if it's the same and people are willing to make that compromise to play against, that level of competition, then why not? Right? Because this was something that they've done in the past, right? People moved to the East Coast to try and play on Europe servers, right? It's the same, I think, kind of concept. But we have a physical location that you can drop a server on, and then we can go back and forth with people from. And I think that's the thing that I hope could one day prove beneficial enough for some of these companies to do it. And then from there, if we can get that, sky's the limit, because then we can have tournaments out here, we can have conventions out here. If you're able to play on zero ping out in Hawaii, I don't need to sell people on a tourist attraction. I think almost everybody and their mother would be like, here's a free ticket to Hawaii, do you want to go? I think most people say yes, right? So having a chance to do events and things from that, through growing that infrastructure, through pushing these other things, I think that's how it all kind of connects and ties together. And that's what I hope is the goal that we reach within the next decade or so.
Well, that's one of the things that I was on my mind, is that with Hawaii being, there's a large Korean population in Hawaii, that there's a good amount of influencers that live in Hawaii and influence back home for them, which would be Korea, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of not the inverse way, just because the way the world turns. It's that's just the way that it will be. And it's interesting because in some ways, I think people just don't think inversely when it comes to sort of strategies like you're talking about, because when you hear executives at Cloud9 and Team Liquid most recently on Thorne's podcast talk about this issue, their resolutions are to to ship people out of the mainland to wherever the server may be, instead of finding sort of these bridge gaps between, or these gaps to fill with the bridges. And I don't think it's an issue that isn't resolvable. I think that what it needs to be done is someone needs to take the first step, right? And so that's kind of like where I think esports is right now, because there's not a very good bridge between the freelancers in esports, the people who have jobs in esports, and the people who are owners or of larger organizations, because right now there's not a line of communication. So if you're a local org owner, it's really complicated to get any sort of valuable insight as to how you make your organization successful. It's like you can't call Hex on the phone and say, how did you get Optic to make what Optic is? Even for someone like myself who is growing a brand from the grassroots and getting to where it is. And I've been lucky because of where I am located, that some of the conferences, some of the events have come to where I am. Whereas a place like Hawaii, if someone had the aspirations of being a player, a caster, a coach, or something like that, they may have to, I don't know what is the process for them to get networked, or when do pro teams or semi-pro teams come to Hawaii to even get a little bit of that energy, that conversation? Because unless you've heard someone talk about it, it's hard to know what it is.
Yeah, no, I mean 100%. It's been rough. Like, don't get me wrong. I'll preface this now. Like, it's not easy living out here and having dreams of being involved in esports, right? The guys that do it, that have done it, I think they've moved very early on to the West Coast, just because there's better opportunities out there. You have better chances and all of that. So the part of it of trying, how do you go from, well, let's tackle the player side, because we have examples for this, right? With Dyrus, with Matt, and with Void. Those are the three names that I usually reference to people. 2 League of Legends players and a Smash player, right? And it really came with just getting good. Like, you really have to be the top of your talent, the ladder from here. You need to be able to impress people from thousands of miles away in order to get your start. And that's the challenge. I mean, none of them live here anymore. That should also signal to you that once you make it, you have to be ready to say goodbye. Like, you're not going to live here anymore. You're going to live on the mainland. But I think that's part of it, is that the only avenue you have to brand yourself and to get noticed if you live out here is really, you got to be good. You got to be at the top 0.0, whatever percent of your game on your server. And that's just how it is. That's just how it goes, right? We have some pretty crazy kids at UH Manoa right now, that, on the UH esports teams, who have hit these top ranks on the servers, right? There's at least one I know that plays Valorant who hit Radiant, so he hit Radiant from Hawaii Ping, by the way, too. Keep that in mind. That kid's crazy. I can't imagine what he'll do at a LAN. But those are some of the things where, as a player, you just got to be good. As anything else, and this is kind of why I wanted to step in and really start doing this, there is no option. There is no clear path, right? You can't be out here and go to conventions easily, right? We have one major convention a year, which thanks to COVID, we didn't even do this last year. That you could maybe even look to get your start at, right? And that's where I came from, right? That's how I got my start. That's how it happened for me, where I was doing this convention with PC Gamers, and that's where we tried new things. We had the attendance and the traction, I guess you could say, to do bigger events. Outside of that, you have to be willing to travel. For me, I had to be willing to take net losses on things just to go and work for somebody else unpaid to do an event, just to get experience, and that's kind of what you have to do if you're serious about wanting to do back end things, producing or even casting. In casting on us, you're on screen, but still it's part of the esports, the side of esports. You have to be willing to travel. You have to be willing to go to the things that you can't see you couldn't see here, to get the experience that will teach you and show you what you can do, for coaches and stuff. I mean, if your ambition is a coach, start at your local high school, start at your university level, and work your way up from there. But I think even there, results will drive how much attention you get. And I think that's part of it. And if I had the answer of how we could take anything we build out here and get it to the level like a Team Liquid, or get it to the level of something else like there, I mean, my God, I would be all in. I would do whatever it took to get that idea going. But
Mm-hmm.
It is a grim thing. It is a grim thought. Not to discourage anyone from wanting to do it, but that's part of why it is. There's so few of us in the scene. I think in terms of production and behind the scenes stuff is because it's a lot of work and it's very daunting for not as much return.
Yeah, you could say it's a higher hill to climb than Cocoa Head.
This is true.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think that the bigger problems are that that you have to travel, you have to kind of be in conversations with people who are legacy in esports. And well, let's just take it from there, is that if you're someone, no matter where you are, really, it doesn't matter if you're on island or you're just out in the middle of nowhere in the boondocks, somewhere, middle America or even down in South America or somewhere, and you don't know anybody and you don't know how to get on the internet and broadcast and be an influence, then you're gonna just kind of be on that treadmill for forever, and hopefully and never be able to hop off. But I think the one thing that people can think of is at least this is all I have. I think is like the only way to get your name out there is to build a portfolio that can you can send to those people, cold send, emails, DMs, whatever possible way you can get in contact with someone at a larger organization to give you a shot at being a coach, we give you a shot at being a caster, or anything, not necessarily a player. The dream of being a player is one of the biggest things, that hurdles to overcome, because you might, like, maybe everything could be working against you, in which you would just have to relocate. A person would have to relocate, and they would have to, leave everything they, established behind to create basically a new life in some other foreign place, foreign land, right? And so, so I see that happening. Obviously, that's a very minor few people, a small amount of people who will make that sort of leap, and go from living in rural Iowa to going and living in Los Angeles or some place, that has a what do they say, a cultural shock when you go from being, even an someone who lives in India to someone who's, now living in the UK or something, like that. Obviously, that might not be as big of a hurdle culturally, but yeah, it takes hard work and dedication and sacrifice to be a successful player in esports. Obviously, I feel like you can create more. You can better showcase your skill as a player if you're good. Obviously, then it's a lot more complicated if you want to be a caster or a personality or an analyst, because that generally goes to people who've been in the industry a while and either been a player, or, like, there's always these caveats as to how the struggle is for being someone who's a personality in esports versus someone who's a player. But what are some of the big things you think are happening? I know we've been talking about esports on island, but what do you think about, like, the big picture, the global esports? What are some of the big things that you're looking forward to?
As crazy as this is gonna sound, I'm looking forward to what else happens in this time of COVID, because COVID has shut down live events. right? And we're in a crazy place, we're a crazy state of the world, and yet through it all, all these crazy things have happened in esports. You know what I mean? We've pushed the boundaries of what we can do from home, from remote, when we're not able to be in the room next to each other, working together. And I think one of the inspiring things is that truly there is ways to figure it out, to work, to make it work, to do things that you would have never thought of doing before, right? In a way that you've never thought of doing before. And I really do think that, the future lies in how creative you can get, right? Creative in not just, what you put together, but how you're going to do it. How do you put on a high level broadcast from thousands of miles away? Riot really tackled that hurdle with how do you put on a tier 1 world championship on the other side of the planet, right? So I think there's the thing. I think as a whole, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the next year, because 2020, as terrible as it was, as rough as it was, with all the hurdles and the hardships that have come, I actually don't, I think it hit esports and our industry as a whole, and we kept going. We've chugged on through it, and we've still managed to do the things we've done. We're still managing to grow in other ways that other industries are, where other industries have fallen, especially in the entertainment world, ours has kind of risen, and so I think that's something I'm really excited for. And I think to kind of wrap this into the part of the point you were making earlier, if you're new and you're young and you're excited, but you don't know what you want to do, how you want to do it, you just get creative, just make something, put something on air. Who cares if it's good? Who cares who sees it? Who cares what it looks like? Just put together something. If you're passionate about it, just put in the work, get the content out, and see where it goes, see where that takes you. Because I do agree, having a portfolio is great, but in the world where we're not able to do live events and everything is from remote, nothing stops some startup kid and from nowhere, right? Some kid from Hawaii to do big broadcasts. Nothing stops you. And logistically, sure, we'll tackle those hurdles, right? The people in place are looking to make their stand and push forward the envelope so that the next generation of creatives, right, entrepreneurs and people that have this spark, that's what I think excites me, is that we still see a lot of the industry as itself has been around for a little while, sure, but I think we're still in the infancy stages. This it has the potential to be so much more and to do so many more things. I mean, science fiction exists for a reason, but once upon a time, airplanes was science fiction, right? Once upon a time, all these things were never available to the world before, and I don't know. It's something that makes me really think and really excited to see what's the next thing that somebody's going to come up with that's going to change the game and make all of our broadcasts go like from, you're just watching something at home to a truly immersive experience, right? Or what's going to make it? Riot tries to do this every year, right? With the way they do stuff. But I think we haven't even scratched the surface of what's possible. And with technology catching up, it's only going to go crazier and crazier, I think, from here.
Absolutely. And on that note, you answered that question that I usually ask when we outro here perfectly, that, if you're what would you advise someone yourself when you were younger, what you should do, or like, what should someone who's just getting in the industry do? And it's build a portfolio. But on the way out here, Kyler, thank you very much for coming on the show. Again, it's Kyler Tandal, EBN Live Designs. But feel free to take this time to shout out some or promo some of your things that you've got going on.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Trent. But yeah, sure. A few shout outs for me personally. You can follow me on Twitter. I guess that's going to be the main shout out I can give. I've learned that a lot of esports work happens on Twitter. At KTADCast, KTADCASTS. From there, you can shoot me an email, Kyler, KYLER, at EMP Live Designs. But really, I'm just looking for anybody that wants a broadcast, any type of work, any type of, no matter how big, how small. What I'm really looking forward to is making friends and seeing what we can do together. What type of cool stuff we can put together, or put on screen. And that's kind of the attitude I've had ever since I've got started. It's treated me well so far, and I'm looking to keep on going with it. Let's just, hey, let's talk. Let's make, let's get to know each other a little bit. Let's be friends, and let's do something cool. And I think that's my only real main shout out, I guess.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you everybody for listening. This has been the Esports